Good evening, everyone. With the time being 6:00 p.m. on Tuesday, January 13th, 2026, I will call this meeting of the Webster School Committee to order and ask that we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The first item on the agenda is the review and approval of the minutes from the December 9th, 2025 meeting. Is there any discussion around those minutes? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve them.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Desiree, would you please pull the committee?
Yes.
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 I'm going to abstain.
Yes, motion passes. And the next item on the agenda is our superintendent's report. Good evening, Mrs. Perangeli.
Good evening and Happy New Year. Welcome back. I hope everybody had some nice time off over the holidays. I know we certainly appreciated our 2-week break, and I know I especially appreciated that break. So it was nice to have that time with family and just some quiet and downtime. I'd like to start off by giving a personnel update. I have no retirements at this time to announce, or official retirements, I should say, to announce at this time. For new hires, we have hired 2 new staff, Lorelei Chisnowski, a paraprofessional at Webster Middle School, and Dominic Palmerino, a new custodian at Bartlett High School. We'd like to welcome them both to the Webster School District, and we're excited to have them on board. We did receive 1 resignation, Rebecca Conley, who was a paraprofessional at Park Ave Elementary. So we're sad to see her go, but we wish her all the best of luck in her future endeavors. There are no transfers at this time, and we continue to have a shortage of instructional assistants and ABAs. Like many other districts across, we continue to advertise, we continue to look to hire new staff. As you know, we had a nice little surge before the Christmas break of hiring with 6 new staff on board. So we hope the new year will continue that and we can bring some more members in. Are there any questions about personnel? No? Okay. As far as instructional update, as you know, the first week back was extremely busy. Busier than I would have liked, actually. We were running around this week. On Monday, January 5th, we did have our new para and ABA orientation. We had the 6 new members that we hired before break. There was a training here in central office with Ms. Debbie Rivera, our curriculum director. The feedback that we've been receiving about the onboarding has been very positive. We do send them a form and ask for feedback, and they've all been happy to go through the training and find it helpful. So we'll, at the end of the year, we'll take a look at all of it and adjust if we need to adjust to make anything better or improve on it. But so far, I would say it's successful. So we're happy about that. Are there any questions about the training? No. I have the full team here tonight. So if there's any questions, feel free to ask. Back in November, I notified you that Webster Middle School and Bartlett High School were receiving site visits from the Center for School District Partnership, which they call the CSDP monitoring. The first week back, Webster Middle School had their visit. Bartlett is scheduled for the week of February 23rd. Progress monitoring includes an analysis of data such as MCAS, vocal, access, and more, and they're going to do a deep dive into school level data practices collected through a 1 or 2 day visit. I know Ms. Peterson will be here and she will be able to update you on the visit that they had at Webster Middle School. This past Thursday, we continued our DILT walkthroughs. In our upcoming meeting in February, we're going to be analyzing and discussing on mid-year data, see what that looks like at that point in time, and see if we made any progress on our instructional priority and see if we need to make any shifts in that. And then this coming week, coming up, I have 2 board meetings on Thursday and Friday. So I will be at the collaboratives both days this week, Thursday and Friday. I also have a DESI scheduling meeting at Holy Cross on Thursday that I will be attending with Dr. Mackay, Ms. Hare, Ms. Peterson. It is scheduling for L and special ed. So we're taking a look at the schedules, and I believe actually Ms. Nieves is also going to see how that works in with the high school also. So we will be doing that on Thursday. And then finally, the leadership team continues to work on a strategic plan. We hope to finish it in our upcoming full DLD on January 22nd. We met as a DLT a couple of weeks ago and touched base on that, did some more work, and then hopefully we can complete the final steps so we can bring that to the committee for their review. And I'm not going to do too much more talking tonight. That's it. Just a little bit more to go. Are there any questions for instructional leadership? No?
Through the chair.
Member Millet?
I do not have a question, but I have a huge comment.
A huge comment. I like it.
Huge.
Bring it on.
Well, at our last meeting, I asked for Christmas cards for Webster Manor, and Park Ave came through with flying colors.
Excellent.
So I want to say a huge thank you to the students and staff at Park Ave because I picked up a box
That is wonderful.
of cards and brought them, and they were the people at Webster Manor were so excited to get them
That is wonderful.
to give to people. So I wanted to make sure I got my thank you out.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, Amy, for doing that with your staff.
They did. It was a big box.
Excellent. Excellent. In other updates, excited to inform you, and Ms. Nieves is here, so if she wants to add a little more detail, she can. I don't want to spoil it too much. That Bartlett High School is being recognized for their work with Big Brother, Big Sister, and have been invited to a ceremony on March 26th in Worcester, so we will be heading out there. Do you want to add anything? You want to wait till your next meeting? We're gathering more details on it, but it was an exciting phone call that we received this week, so Ms. Nieves will give you an update at her meeting, I think, which is next time, right? Next meeting. On December 16th, I attended Adult Ed Multicultural Night at Bartlett High School. That was a wonderful event, and I want to give a shout out to Director Ava Landry for her work in putting that together. It was very well attended. It was exciting to see parents and students and children celebrating in a variety of cultures. They had, it was a wonderful turnout. They had a lot of staff and students, adult students, and younger students there. And I will tell you, the food was delicious from everybody. So I went there not intending to eat dinner, and I ate more than my share, trying new foods. It was wonderful. So I want to give Ava a shout out for that. It was also very exciting to see before Christmas that our winter performance by our choral and band group on December 18th in our new auditorium. It was magical to be there, and all the feedback that we received from parents and community members was fantastic. It's just being in that auditorium, it feels, what's the word I want to use? For me, it felt magical being in there, but everything, the visual, the seeing, the sound, it feels like you're close. You're sitting right up there in front. I was actually up on the balcony to get a feel for that. And I don't think there's a bad seat in the house. And it was just great to see. And I know the chorus and band were very excited to be performing in there. Oh. Any comments?
Through the chair. I just want to say, my son and I went, and he took pictures. And then he sent them to his brother, because they both graduated from Bartlett, and they're very excited. They want to see this when it's all completed.
That's great. That's great. It's moving along. We're getting there. So, but it was wonderful to be in the auditorium, and the use moving forward, I can't wait to see a play, the drama in there, and other uses of the auditorium. I'm sure it's going to get its use and for many things, and even the community, welcoming the community into our auditorium. I'm excited to hear the feedback on that. And then we've started work on our upcoming school year calendar, so I hope to bring that to you either at the next meeting or the first meeting in February. Once I get some draft, we work through it as an admin team, and then once I feel ready, we'll bring it forward to you. And then on this Friday evening, I attended the Winter Literacy Night at Park Ave. It was great to see the parents and students and the staff show up. I want to thank the PTO for organizing this event and for all the volunteers and staff who gave up their Friday night to make the evening a success. I know I saw Ms. Pugliafico and Mrs. O there, and many teachers. If it wasn't for them doing the crafts, doing the shows, doing the readings, we wouldn't have these wonderful events. So I just want to say thank you to all of them for giving up their Friday night and coming out and supporting our families. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mrs. Perangeli. Any questions or comments from the committee? No,
Thank you.
hearing none. Okay, well,
Yeah.
thank you. Appreciate
Trying to
your
keep it at a
efforts.
minimum because you're going to hear enough from me later.
Yes. The next item on the agenda is our business manager report. Good evening, Mrs. Contos.
Good evening, everyone. Happy New Year. We're going to get started with an update on the renovation project in follow-up to our last meeting. I did share with you that the Phase 2 completion date was at risk. We have confirmed that that schedule is going to move out 2 months, so from February break to April break, and that is confirmed being moved out. There were attempts to try to accelerate the schedule, work weekends, work nights. Some of those options added additional cost to try to expedite that. And even at that, that schedule was really not realistic. And so the end result is that we are moving that date out. And as we shared, we certainly weren't going to push to get a just-in-time, get into the building like we did last time. We really wanted it all to be buttoned up so that that move-in and that transition was smooth, and that we didn't spend 80 hours here during the break to get it all done. So that is moving. What we don't know at this point, though, is whether or not that is going to move the Phase 3 date out. They are evaluating the schedule to see if they will be able to accelerate over the summer, to be able to keep it on track for October. They're evaluating the schedule, not confident that they'll be able to pull it in October, but the OPM is looking at those schedules to try to see whether or not this is really going to be feasible, and then they'll advise us back on that. Any questions? In terms of getting ready for that move, we actually have still been working on move planning. So one of the things we accomplished over break is we had 2 of our science teachers in, as well as a chemical company, and we were able to actually go through all of the science chemicals, get some of the chemicals disposed of, and the remaining chemicals in their different classes and stored until we're ready for the move. So that was a big accomplishment to get that done. So really appreciated the teachers coming in and helping us get that done. The other tidbit is that the school building committee just last week took a tour of Section B, and I know 2 members of the school committee were able to join. So I think it was exciting to get in there, be able to see it come to life. The ceilings I know weren't up, so you were able to see all the mechanicals in the ceilings and all of the wiring that's running through, but you were able to get a good feel for that layout of Section B. I don't know if any of you want to comment about what you saw or add to that. I know I couldn't walk through myself, but I did hear it was very good.
Yeah, it's exciting to start walking through and seeing walls up, drywall up, flooring start to be laid, trying to actually get a understanding of where am I at in the building, because it looks so different, with maps to say, can you tell me again where I am? Can you tell me what rooms these are going to be? Because it's that different when you walk through. But it is exciting. And I can't wait to see it done. We will find a time to invite the whole school committee to go through so you can take a look at it. But it is moving along. You think, when you walk through, you think, is this going to be ready in 3 months? But it's amazing how fast progress happens in the building every day. So.
Yeah, I think the big shift is we were so accustomed to one hallway throughout the entire building. And once you get into Section B, that really changes from Section C, right? It's not just one hallway. There's different nooks and can't say the word, in the building, which gives it a completely different look and feel to how the flow goes, right? So it's exciting. We're actually, I think the report we got last week is officially about 73% complete in the project. I think we reported that with the completion of Phase 1, that was 50%, and so now we're up to about 73%. So after we get through this, hate to say it, the next 2 phases are going to feel very, very easy in comparison to the first 2.
Take that back.
I said feel easy. I didn't say it would be easy. Okay, moving on to some maintenance updates. The first one's really not a maintenance per se, but just awareness. We actually had a power outage in our IT closets at Park Ave last week, which caused some of our internet to go down. It turns out that a breaker in a full room UPS went out, and the likely suspected cause was a power surge of some type that caused that to happen, but we were able to get that back online. At Webster Middle School, we did have to replace a valve on our water tank. That was malfunctioning, and we were also working on replacing a shower in one of the science classrooms that actually had a leak that was coming through on the ceiling. And then in the district office, we've had some challenges with the heat in this section, and we actually had some compressors that had to be replaced that were under warranty. Those compressors were replaced, but in the course of doing the work of replacing the compressors, of course, more things came to light. We had some refrigerant that needed to be recovered. We had some sensors that needed to be replaced. And then in the superintendent's office, the thermostat itself was sending some errors out, so a cassette actually had to be replaced. So now the heat is in full force. I think we can all feel it in this room. Yeah, working good. I mean, and we needed that because on some of those cold days, it was getting cold in here. So I think we're up and running all in this section now. So that's it for maintenance updates, unless there's any questions. Okay, I'm going to move on to some other updates. I want to give an update on the Chapter 70 formula. The foundation inflation factor has been set at 2.76%. That's one of the factors that's used in the Chapter 70 formula. This is what they're considering the second release. They technically feel like they're behind schedule because of the government shutdown. But DESE will actually use the final factor that's going to be released on January 22nd. And from what I understand, there's not usually much fluctuation with that factor. And last year it was at 1.93. So this is an increase over last year. And so that's some good news in terms of what we can potentially look to see in state aid. The other thing that happened on the Chapter 70 front, as we're looking forward to budgeting at the state level, is the Joint Ways and Means Committee met. They met with the Mass Taxpayers Foundation and the Department of Revenue to take a look at revenues and look at the levels that we are at 26 and whether or not they're going to be making any changes. And the projections really landed with the DOR looking at projections between 1.7 and 3.1% increases potentially. And the Taxpayer Foundation is really thinking it's somewhere between 2 and 3%, but they're proceeding with caution as they look at what those revenues might be moving forward. So that's the latest report that we've gotten from MASBO on Chapter 70. On the federal grant front, we're continuing to monitor where we are with the grant funding. As you know, on November 12th, the continuing resolution was issued, and that runs through January 20th. So we're really in a state of flux, hoping that they'll be able to get a budget passed because what they're working on has a direct impact on our title grants as well as our SPED grants as we move forward. So if they can't come to an agreement, we'll continue moving forward without a sense of clarity of what direction the grant funding is going at the federal level. They also did announce, which you may already be aware of, is that they're shifting the responsibility of the title grants from the Department of Education to the Department of Labor. It does look like the special education grants will stay with the Department of Education for the time being. They haven't made any announcements that they're going to be shifting that at all. Any questions on that? The other thing, just for awareness, it's in your packet if you're interested. At the end of this month, the Mass Taxpayers Foundation is going to have an open house. It's a virtual open house, and they will be going over Governor Healy's budget. So they're going to give a full overview of that if you're interested in attending. There's a link in your packet if you want to register for that. And also on the Chapter 70 front, what I included in your packet is 2 testimonies about the Chapter 70 formula that I thought you might find interesting. One is from the Massachusetts Budget and Policy Center itself, as well as MASBO, which they did their own analysis of what they thought some of the things that needed to be addressed in that formula moving forward. This is kind of the continuation of the listening series that Governor Healy did, and I think there's some interesting things in there relative to changes that are being promoted to be made within that funding. And we are in year 6 of 6. So not in this round will we see changes, but hopefully going into fiscal year 28, we'll see some adjustments to how that formula is calculated. I think that's all I had for updates. Any questions?
Thank you for your updates, Mrs. Contos. Any questions from the committee? No? Okay, well, thank you. Lots happening. Hopeful that the building project will continue to chug along the way it has been, and, you know, no more unexpected situations during this phase.
Yeah, I think we're beyond the unforeseen conditions, so I'm not expecting anything to come forward from that standpoint.
Okay, that's
Yeah,
good.
the unforeseen things really come in during like the demolition and then when they start to rebuild things back. So I think we're beyond that point.
Yeah, okay,
We just
great.
hope that when we get into phase 3, we don't encounter any more unforeseen.
Right, exactly, yeah. Okay. And the next item on our agenda is our principal report, and joining us this evening from Webster Middle School is Miss Heidi Peterson. Good evening.
Good evening, everybody. Tonight, I'm going to talk to you about our recent AIR visit, so I'll tell you what that means. Last week, part of Department of Education's CSDP AIR monitoring took place. The CSDP is the DESE Center for School and District Partnership, and AIR is the American Institute for Research. AIR is not part of DESE. It's, they are working with DESE, or actually for DESE. DESE sends them out to collect data, and then AIR reports back to DESE's CSDP. So the purpose of this monitoring cycle is to gather feedback and data on work being done to improve student outcomes, specifically at Webster Middle School. And then once the AIR completes their report, they will provide their information both to us, the school, and the district, and to the DESE's CSDP. So there are 4 parts to this process. There was a principal questionnaire which I had to fill out, which asked about how we collect data, what our curriculum is. And then I had an hour Zoom principal interview. And then we had a full day site visit where 2 members of AIR came and did classroom visits for the day. They did have a guideline which they were following, so I'll talk about that in a little bit. And then after the site visit, we had in-person interviews with 7 focus groups. So 2 different members of AIR came to the building for another full day, and they met for an hour with each of the following groups. Our counselors, we had 2 teacher groups with 5 teachers in each group. We had a student group with 5 students representing all 4 of our grades and various subgroups of students. We had a special ed focus group with 3 members of our special ed team, the EL teachers, and then 3 members of our instructional leadership team. And then the fourth part of the process was a survey that was sent to staff members, well, teaching staff members. So the questions that they had asked were around what types of data we utilize and how it's used, our curricula, what types of interventions we use, how we get to those interventions, how we determine what students need interventions, what types of student supports we have, both academic and social emotional, and then questions around staffing and how we support students with staff. The classroom visits focused on student support, classroom climate, student productivity, instructional formats, content understanding, analysis and inquiry, and quality of feedback from staff to students, and instructional dialogue. So it's quite a lengthy process. The only thing that I, as the principal, was part of was the principal questionnaire and the principal interview. So I did not go on the classroom visits. And I obviously didn't sit in on the focus groups. But my understanding is all the questions were pretty similar around data and interventions and all the things that I listed. So in talking to staff members, they were positive about their conversations and the classroom visits. They definitely felt like it was more of a conversation than a peppering of questions and answers. The last time we had an AIR visit was at least 5 years ago. It might have even been 6 years ago. I know it was before my time, but I know I have the data from those visits, so definitely before COVID. And then the staff have also indicated that they were much more able to answer their questions in terms of what our data looks like and how the teachers and how we utilize our data in the building. So that's what we've been going through the last 2 weeks of returning from vacation. I'm happy to answer any questions I can around this.
Through the chair.
Member Scriglia?
I just want to recognize you and your staff for diving in and doing this. I know it wasn't a choice, but in addition, like you said, coming back from break and also knowing probably this was going to happen leading up to break, on top of everything else that you guys have to navigate and deal with. It's not, I think, it's appreciated and it's noticed, you and your staff, and I look forward to seeing the results of what they can come put together for us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from Ms. Peterson? Thank you for sharing the experience. It sounds like a thorough process.
We'll be doing it again in a month over at the high school. And as always, feedback for these reports is informative. We're always looking to improve and do better and grow. So we look forward to their comments and reading their feedback.
Yeah, how long does it take until we can get the feedback from all of these visits?
I didn't hear a deadline on
I didn't
when they
get
were
a
sent.
deadline. I can reach out to them and find out, but again, I wasn't part of the last process, so I'm not sure how long it takes. It is a pretty lengthy report that they send back, if it's the same type of report, unless they've changed anything. So it will probably take some time, probably the spring, I would
Are
imagine.
you saying a couple months, Patty? Yeah. Yep. Yeah. This was very different. Typically, I get the emails and saying, we're going to come to your office, we're going to speak with you, we're going to go to the schools, and it's very hands-off from us here at central office. They've been working directly with the schools. They're doing their own scheduling, setting up their own focus groups. So it was very hands-off. It was very much staff surrounding the staff and students. So I really look forward to hearing what the feedback is.
Great. Is that feedback that you'll share out in some fashion to us and maybe give us some updates on
Maybe.
how that goes?
Maybe. I'll think about it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sure we can arrange that.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to hear. I'm sure there's a lot of great things going on and maybe some opportunities there.
Absolutely. There's always opportunity for growth. And it's always good to get the perspective from somebody who's coming in who doesn't live in your building every day to see what's going on. So, we even see that with our walkthroughs. You're in a classroom for 10, 15 minutes at a time sometimes, and you're trying to get a gist of everything that's going on in that one lesson. So, and we are there often, we see what's going on. So I look forward to their reports. I look forward to the feedback. And we'll share out once we
Yeah.
get it back.
That sounds great. Any other updates?
That's all I had tonight because that was quite extensive. So I know the report wasn't super extensive, but
Yep.
it was a big thing for us. So.
Great. Well, thank you very much for those updates. The next item on our agenda is our update from our student representative.
And I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Nieves.
So Eric, our new representative, was unable to make it tonight. They have switched their track meet from tomorrow to tonight in Boston. So he's at the track meet. So I have his report.
Okay, great.
He wanted to introduce himself, but I believe that was done a little
Well,
bit at the
He
last
wasn't
one.
here. I introduced him, but he wasn't here.
But
So-
he says he's a senior and he's involved with many events around the school. He wanted to note some positives, that we've made it through halfway through the school year. And another big one was during lunch, our lunch has changed to what we call OVS to reduce food waste. And so the students get a little bit more choice as far as what they can choose. So they're given
Offer
one.
versus serve.
Yes. They get to choose, they get the main piece of the meal and then they can choose what they want as they go along. So the students are really, we did a soft rollout. They seem to be liking it. So far, we just did it as of last week. He said some challenges. They're walking into final exams starting tomorrow. So that's one of the challenges. Lots of student engagement events. He said that we just had Fun Friday Trivia. We have that every Friday by Mr. Peranto, where they say a fun question every Friday, and then it's the first person to email the answer to Miss Smallars, and they get an award every Friday. So that ranges from staff events to, I don't know, anything that Mr. Peranto can come up with. They just had a DECA Club district competition at Nichols College, and I will be able to announce more at the next one, but we did have someone qualify to move forward. In the end, we just found that out. And every Friday now, PBIS is giving out raffle prizes for their Bartlett Bucks they can buy into it at lunch. He said coming up, there's an open audition call, actually tomorrow for our spring showcase. There's a food can drive being run right now by the student ambassadors where 5 cans can be exchanged for 1 game admission for the boys' basketball game tomorrow night. And that they're given a golden ticket to get into the game and just for Bartlett students. And they're walking into, they walked into Study Sync benchmark testing and CPM benchmark testing right after the break. Family events, we have 2, he said, one coming up on February 12th with his community bingo night, and one coming up on March 28th, which is the community egg hunt and breakfast. He has lots for sports. And he mentioned the indoor track team just had their CMAC meet with Xavier capturing first with a time of 5.8 seconds, and Deborah taking first with a time of 6.8 seconds. The Bartlett versus Oxford game is tomorrow night, which is a big game, and they're doing the big green wave, so anyone that's coming, they want to wear all green. There's the track meet tonight at Reggie Lewis Field in Boston. There's a JV girls game coming up against Oxford on the 14th with the JV boys, that's at Oxford, and then the boys JV and varsity is tomorrow night here at home. The freshmen boys play against Auburn on the 15th, and the JV girls again against South Lancaster on the 15th. And for senior class updates, they begin to post the scholarships and that the students can apply for. So he's excited about that. And that's the whole report.
Great. Thank you for sharing that.
Thanks.
Hope Eric does well tonight.
I do too, and he will be here at the next one, he said.
Great. He's a student first and an athlete and then a school committee rep after that, so we get it. Thanks again. The next item on the agenda under old business is a monthly report on fundraising applications. I don't have that pulled up in front of me at the moment. Anything to report out on fundraising? I see some here.
No, we have the Gridiron, the football team, who is selling snacks, and they did put in drinks, and I did ask that they only do water in the gymnasium at this point, just because it's a new gymnasium, and You know, we don't want all that sticky stuff all over the floors. Water's easy to clean up, the other stuff not so much. So they're selling water and snacks at the game, so that was approved. And then the Webster Middle School Band and Chorus is doing a Papagino's fundraiser on January 20th of this month. So everybody order your pizza and your snacks on January 20th from Papagino's. A portion of that will go towards the Webster Middle School Band and Chorus.
Great, thank you.
And I want to thank the staff for their efforts and the Gridiron for their efforts in fundraising. There's so much that goes on that these members are doing for our students to raise money, so we appreciate all their efforts.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I agree. Just a reminder, the school committee's role is to review fundraising activities. We don't approve them. Those are done at the building level. And moving right along, the next item on our agenda under new business is the FY27 budget update.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to plug in here. And as you see in front of you, you have the whole team tonight that worked together to put this budget together. And I'm going to ask them that if at any point that I am varying or that I'm missing a point, please don't hesitate to speak up. This is a team effort. So let me get this up here. So as you know, it is our job annually to come up with a budget with the school committee's recommendation. We always take a look at multiple budget scenarios. The budgets that we're presenting tonight is not a budget that we're asking to go forward, but more of information for the school committee that as we move through the budget season and we're asked to make decisions, that you have all the information that you need to know what we need to run a district here in town. So I'll start out. This is just our budget planning calendar that we have in district. We start our planning in October, going out, sending templates out, and I think it's a little easier. Well, I can go through here. So in October, we prepare budget templates and we send them over to the schools. That is where the principals meet with their department leaders and talk about the needs in the school, what department requests are. Once we have the department requests, they bring them to district leadership team. We spend November and December working together as a team, meeting with individual groups. We meet with the building principals, Ms. Contos and I individually, to talk about what the school needs, what are they looking for. Once we do that, we come together as a group. The principals are also meeting with special education. They're meeting with the L department. They're meeting with the curriculum department to talk about needs within the schools. Once we do that in November, we start putting the budget together and discussing it as a team. We take all those requests, anything that they need. We start talking about curriculum. We start talking about our programming. What does that look like? Do we have any changes in the program? This year, we took, knowing what the climate is like, we took a very conservative approach, knowing that this is basically a needs-based budget. What does that look like for us? There are staff requests we knew would pretty much be off the table, and we were looking at managing, putting together a budget that we can manage with the staff that we have. So you'll see that moving forward. We're here tonight with a first presentation for the school committee. We're hopeful for your feedback and look forward to it. Any adjustments, corrections, any thoughts that you want to share with us, we'll take that back, review as a team. We'll then come back if there are adjustments that need to be made with another budget revision in January. And then we are tasked with sending a budget to the town by the end of February. So we have to have a school committee budget approved that goes to the town by the end of February, that then we start having those discussions as a whole with the town members, with the town boards. Once we do that, we'll continue hopefully finding out what our revenue looks like. We'll be getting some updates next week, I believe it is, from the state hopefully as to where they stand with their revenues and their budgets. We'll then sit and work with the town to see what the town revenue looks like, and hopefully come up with some final recommendations, and if we need to, approve another budget before our public hearing on April 4th. As you know, everything needs to go to the town at their annual town meeting to be approved for the end of the year. Are there any questions about the timeline or the budget process? No. So we talked about our FY27 budget goals as a team. Part of what we were doing was creating a fiscally responsible level service budget that preserves our existing service quality, compliance, and operational capacity without expanding programs and increasing resource demands. We prepared a budget that fully satisfies all our collective bargaining agreements. That includes all our wage adjustments to stipends across the board. We continually reevaluate and improve student programming. We're looking at strong academic skills in all students by sustaining and expanding our HQIM to ensure student achievement and equitable access. As you know, over the past few years, we have been building our HQIM. We've been doing that since COVID, working on that. We're looking to foster continuous learning and skill enhancement among staff. So PD is always very important to improve and grow. Like I said, we're always looking for ways to gain and grow as staff, as individuals, so that professional development is very important. We're continuing to provide a safe and supportive learning environment. And we're looking at the budget as a system-wide approach. Right? We operate as a system. We are one team here. So what does that budget look like for everybody? And then as always, we work collaboratively with our town partners, the finance committee, the town accountant, and the town administrator. We communicate frequently about our budget needs and work together to present an overall balanced budget to the town in May. This is our district priority. I'm not going to stay on this slide. You've seen it a few times this year. But this is what we're going to be reviewing in February, monitoring, and this drives a lot of our needs across the district. As you know, our Chapter 70 funds is based off our school enrollment. So this is a look at our enrollment since 2019. As you know, we had that big dip during COVID years. And then we've been slowly building some traction back. Our numbers in October were up to 1736. So those still significantly down prior to COVID, but we are slowly building up. This is a breakdown by school. So if you look at that, you can see that we've had some shifts. We've had some big grades going through. Those big grades are now hitting Bartlett. So you've seen our Bartlett enrollment creep up and our middle school enrollment creep down, adjusting by the grade levels at the schools. We did our enrollment we were looking at it again last week, and we have remained pretty level. We were down one student from where we were in October. So our enrollment has stayed pretty steady. I'm not saying we haven't had students come in and out, but it's level. It's staying the same. I don't know if Ms. Pugliafico, if you want to talk about your class size, your enrollment.
You can see here what we're looking at with keeping everything the same as it is right now. We are consistently evaluating our enrollment. Things have been shifting and changing a little bit throughout each grade level, so we always need to be assessing that, but this is where we are currently, and then you see so FY26 is where we are, And then FY '27 is just bumping up that, where they are right now, the current enrollment size to the next grade, and then keeping all the teachers the same. So it stays pretty consistent, a couple dips here, a couple little bit of shifts upward there in class size, but generally stays the same from last year to this year.
Just a quick question before we move on from this slide. Thoughts around the grade 4 class size of 25 estimated? It seems kind of bumping up on the higher end of what we would be
Right, well,
looking for
again,
there.
we're always looking at enrollment, and I'd say right now, it's a little too early to
Yeah.
say we would make that change. So, but this keeps our overall staffing, like our number of
Correct.
classroom teachers, the same across the building. Might there be a need to shift somewhere? Yes. Is it a little premature to necessarily say that? Possibly, because if we then go from somewhere else. So we aimed at keeping the number of classrooms the same, not only just for consistency there, but building capacity in terms of classrooms.
Right,
We're
sure.
tight on space.
That
So
makes
reasonably
sense.
expect such a large jump from enrollment this year in 3rd grade to 4th grade? The additional 15 kids, isn't it?
Currently, we have 149 in 3rd grade, so that will be moving. So
It's gone up since.
So here we have 149 in 3rd grade right now, so that's anticipated to be. So what we typically do, yeah. So we're going to monitor over the next couple of months if we have to shift grade levels or make any adjustments. But right now to do that, sometimes our enrollment can really jump in certain months, and we might not want to make those decisions right now. We have time for those decisions.
Yeah.
Through the chair.
Yep, Member Scriglia?
I was just going to say, I was going to ask about the classrooms because there's no empty classrooms. It's not like you're,
No,
Right.
we're creating classrooms out of
Right.
other spaces.
So
putting up
say,
dividers
like-
and creating new
right.
classrooms.
if we needed an additional 4th grade room, it was
And
not.
I have several specials teachers on carts.
Right.
That go into the grade level
Do
classroom.
we have any specials that are not on carts now?
Yes, art and music
Art, that's right, yep.
and library.
Yep.
But art and music have classrooms.
Who's on carts, like technology or something? Or
Technology and STEAM. Mhm.
Yes, please.
It has historically been the case at Park Avenue that 3rd and 4th grade, like, flip. So
Okay.
one year you have 6 and 3rd, and the next year you have 7, and it depends on the enrollment of 2nd grade. And so it's early, but it's also not unusual at all, especially when we don't know what enrollment's going to look like in the summer. We could be having a very different conversation when we come back toward this, closer to the start of the school year, depending on enrollment. So at this point in time, this is about stability, and we have to wait and see what happens. But we anticipate, if history tells us, teaches us any lessons, that there probably will need to be some adjustment.
and through the chair.
Member Scriglia?
And I'm more freaked out about the 21, in 21 in 1st grade and kindergarten. Just thinking about those babies, it's granted smaller bodies, 4th grade, you think bigger bodies in a smaller space, but just the level of independence at that level, but.
One thing I would add about that, though, is the kindergarten typically has, if I'm not mistaken, another adult in the room. A paraeducator is typically assigned to each kindergarten room, which alters that ratio a little bit.
Is that sped para or just a classroom para classroom?
At
Yeah.
K, it's a classroom para, not assigned to special ed.
And it was nice to see our enrollment this year for kindergarten going up, because we had a couple of smaller years where we weren't getting the numbers, so a good jump this year. I don't know if it's the COVID babies that are coming in or that time of year, we might be seeing that again. So we'll see, but there is not a lot of wiggle room. And as you know, we're in a year, because we haven't made the adjustment in this budget because of timing. but we have 3 preschool classrooms that are going to be heading over to the high school. So there's going to be a shift there, which will give a little additional space there. But then we got to talk about what does that look like? What are we moving? Where do we go? We did not incorporate that because the building's not going to be done until October maybe. And are we going to be moving those classes mid-year? We don't know what that's going to look like for our pre-K kids.
Yep.
Ms. Peterson, the middle school?
Yeah, same as Ms. Poliafico, we're pretty static. You can see that we have some bigger classes too. So we are not looking at adding staff in terms of content.
Any questions for middle school? No. I think 22 to 25 is a good-sized class for the middle school. You wouldn't really want to get it too much more than that and increase that class size.
I agree. The trick is here, right? I mean, they're teaching in teams. So it would be interesting. It would change the whole structure of the middle school. If they were to
Exactly.
add one classroom teacher in a grade level, am I right?
Yep.
Through the chair.
Member Scriglia?
Do you find yourself at the middle school at the same, like with the Park Ave, with numbers of classrooms, or are you okay with space?
We're currently okay with space. One of the reasons is because this year, well, previously we had a large number of students receiving resource services. So we had 2 7th and 8th grade resource teachers. This year our numbers are lower, so we were able to combine that to 1 teacher. So we actually have an extra room at this point. So yeah.
Don't say that too loud. Ms. Poliafico's looking at you.
Through the chair, because I just remember too, like Park Ave, when I went there, we separated at a certain point. Some kids stayed at AJS, some kids went to Park Ave just because of the space. So, not saying we're there yet, but I know, but it did happen.
Having taught there at that point, just having two 3rd grade classrooms at Park Avenue and the rest at middle school, we will do everything in our power to avoid that.
Yes. That's not ideal.
Yeah.
And then the high school? Ms. Nieves?
We're staying the same as well. We average 25 to 30 students in all of our classrooms with no expected changes. And we use every ounce of space right now with the 3 buildings split, and we try to find space everywhere. We have classes in every nook and cranny right now.
Any questions for the high school?
No.
This next slide takes a look at our student populations. So if you look at the top, that's our enrollment by race and ethnicity. And then if you look at our bottom, this is the percentage of students that, if you look, it compares us to the state. So high needs in our district, we are 81.3 compared to 55 at the state level. Our English learners, we are higher than the state level at 16.6. First language not English is a little lower than the state level at 23.3 to 27. Low income, we are much higher, 71%, rather than the state at 42. And then students with disabilities is extremely high at 26% versus 20.6 across. So we are a very diverse school with high needs. Dr. Mackay?
This slide is really designed to give you an idea of just the changes in the population in the L world. So what you have is what we ended at the end of the year 24-25 with what our current numbers are. And so, for example, at Park Avenue, we had 150 Ls that were serviced. We currently have 124 Ls that are serviced. Ls are considered, students who are Ls are opt-out Ls and students that get direct service. Of those students that got direct service in June, some of those students fell. We actually had a nice population of students, a good chunk of students that reached the proficiency level where they no longer require. So it's not like they moved, it's not like we have less students, they just they attained their proficiency level. Certainly some students moved. And we have, which brings our number down to 124 students that are being currently serviced. What I'd like to point out about Park Avenue in particular is that Park Avenue has 62% of its 124 students that require 2 sessions of ELD. So it's not a simple numbers game where you can say, oh, we have less students, therefore we might need one less teacher. When 62% of the students need 90 minutes of ELL, not 45 minutes of ELL. So I think that that's an important qualifier. So that helps us say we need to keep what we're doing. We need to keep the staff that we're doing. In fact, we have the new kindergarten teacher who is, that was a really good addition for us to see if we can get, quicker proficiency by servicing directly at the kindergarten level. But that person is doing 3 sessions in other grades because they have an overflow in other grades. So, that is, that's an important qualifier. The other schools are pretty stable, I think, but they still have 41%, so almost half of the students in the other 2 schools also require 2 sessions of ELD. So it is, it's just important to remember that. It's not as simple, like how many Ls do we have versus how many teachers, but what level of service they might need. And as you know, students that fell and students that opt out require monitoring. And we have had, we also do a lot of paperwork and collaboration with other teachers for students that are not making progress. That's one of the accountability markers. Our L population, while we have had a good number of students in pockets in certain grade levels do reach that proficiency level where they are no longer considered to need direct service, we have a good number of students that are not making sufficient progress, so they do better, but the state sets these target levels, and we have, it's kind of like AYP used to be with MCAS. The state sets these benchmarks, and that's the standard. Even though their scores increase, that's the standard that we have to consider. The state actually tells us it's a 0 or a 1, didn't make progress or made progress, according to those benchmarks. So then we have to do a lot more work at all of those levels, the opt-outs and the serviced Ls, to try to fill in the gaps, like why didn't they make progress, including, we've been talking a lot about chronic absenteeism and, is that an impact? Does chronic absenteeism have an impact on whether students make progress or not? And the answer is yes, of course. So we need to do things about that as well. Any questions about the numbers and the numbers change, but the staff doesn't?
Member Caleros?
I just had a quick question about do you have rough percentage of the amount where ESL and also have a Sorry, do you have a rough estimate about the number of students who are ESL who also have a disability and how that's impacting progress at all?
Sure, it's about 25% of our students.
Okay.
I have it broken down by grade level for our mid-year meeting. I also have it broken down by that benchmark that was set by the state. And so by grade level, how many students didn't make progress? Of those students that didn't make progress, how many students are duly identified? How many students are opt-out? Each of which come with different action steps.
The next slide is our special education profile. Ms. Here, would you like to speak to that?
Sure. Good evening. So as you could see, the student count over last year decreased by 24 students. So I just wanted to kind of explain why that is and then have a conversation around our numbers related to the the disabilities, because the numbers could look very deceiving and there's some background knowledge that could really be beneficial. So when we see a drop in numbers, we look at the data-driven reasons as to why this may be the case. It could be students newly qualified and their IEPs haven't been signed, so they wouldn't be accounted for. It could be students moved out, graduated, could have a lesser plan, like a 504 plan, a district accommodation plan. So it could be that they're still in our system, but they're not in our system for special education. What I thought would be interesting to share at this point is, although we have seen a decline in special education students, we do have 121 students on 504. So there is over 600 students in the district that have a known disability or a suspected disability. We shared a very similar information related to primary disabilities. So students could have more than one. They could have up to 3 identified, but they require 1 in order to qualify for an IEP. What's really interesting is, and what makes this deceiving, is that if you look at the communication one and you see that we have a decline of 16 students this year in communication, it doesn't mean that they're the only ones that are receiving speech and language services. So I wanted to share some background information. Right now, we have over 252 students receiving speech and language services. So that's approximately 252 hours of speech and language services that we're delivering. So if you were taking into account that we have 4 staff members that could deliver those services that have about 30 hours each, that's about 180 hours of service delivery time. So just, doing the math in your head, when you have to service 252 kids, you know right away that it's not one-to-one treatments, it's not even possible. Then you take into account that only 4 of those staff members are going to provide consultation services, and they need to adjust for 65 hours a week of consultation services. So that is really like the crux behind why we have it's not the number of students that we have, but the needs that they have. A student with autism, for example, may have physical therapy, occupational therapy, be in a specialized classroom, one-to-one support. So when you see an increase of 19 students, that could really change the whole dynamic of a building or of a program, because there's very strict guidelines around how many students could attend a class program. Does anybody have any questions or further information?
Through the chair.
Member Caleros?
I know you've told me this, so I apologize, but how, out of the communication, you said there's 4 staff. How many are speech and language pathologists versus assistants?
Good question. We have 4 speech and language pathologists in the district and 2 speech and language assistants, pathology assistants, and 1 open position. Any other questions?
This is right off the DESE website, and so this is a student placement. This takes a look at Webster and compares it to the state of our regular education students and our special education students compared to the state. So as you can see, if you look at the years, we've been pretty consistent since 2021 with the ratios much higher than the state level. So our numbers fall in line with the pattern across the state over the years. In 2025, we had 91.4% of our students with disabilities in district and 8.6% out of district. This takes a look at our, oh, yeah, go ahead.
I'll take this one for you.
Yep.
So we're going to just focus on here, just looking at out-of-district placement. So those students who we've made a determination, or maybe the student moved in and they already had an out-of-district placement, that we're not able to service them within district. So what this is painting a picture for you, let me just kind of lay this out for you. So you have a chart at the bottom. The yellow is giving the number of students, and again, the number of students is very fluid. This is what's snapped at the time that we do the budget, right? So that yellow line is number of students. At the bottom, the gray line that you're seeing going across there is the inflation factor that the OSD sets for out-of-district tuition rates, right? So they set that inflation factor rate. And you may recall, maybe a few meetings ago, I had talked about the big increase that happened in 2024, which is a 14% increase, and that's the spike that you see there. And then what we're seeing combined there is all of the tuition costs that we've had for those out-of-district placements. So that's costs that we had directly in our local education budget, as well as money that we use from our circuit breaker reimbursement, right? So we pay those tuitions out of both the local budget as well as the circuit breaker reimbursement. The interesting thing to see is that while we're seeing a decline in students going into our projection for fiscal year 27, yet you're seeing the tuition going up. So that's why we actually put the average on there, so you could get a sense of, you know, what we're seeing in terms of shifts in overall tuition. So in some cases, I mean, there's a range of tuitions. Collaboratives are less expensive than going to private schools, but then the ranges are very different as well, and we have some very high tuitions that we're seeing based on the needs that our students have. So I think this tells an interesting story about what we're seeing relative to cost and number of students and our out-of-district placements. Any questions? Fiscal year 26 and 27, I just want to highlight, there's an asterisk there. Those are both budgeted numbers for now. And then keeping along the lines of special education, we've been sharing these slides for the last couple years, but I think it's showing the trend. The solid line that we're seeing here is the total cost of tuition as well as services. So services are what we consider our contracted services, where we may go out, we may work with French River to augment some additional services that we need to provide. It could be through additional psych evaluations that could be needed. In a couple years, they were actually augmenting for some vacancies that we had in some areas that we weren't able to hire for. So we actually went out through services to augment an actual FTE because we were unable to hire that. But this gives you the full breakdown of overall with the line that shows the trending that we've been experiencing that's going up, breakdown by the different types of tuition or where we've actually applied circuit breaker overall. And if we move on, now, not in our budget, right, directly in our local budget is transportation, but those costs for out-of-district placement have a direct correlation with the projection that we provide to the town for special education transportation. We know the last couple years have been particularly challenging with special education transportation. We actually put a couple freezes on to help cover some of those costs over the last couple years. And as a result, our projection for the town was much higher than it's ever been with respect to transportation going into fiscal year 26.
And what we've seen in our numbers dropping in our counts of student counts, you would think our transportation would go down, hopefully, but depending on who's leaving, because for instance, on our collaborative runs, those are not single runs, those are runs where we have a bus going there no matter what. So we could have 6, 7, 8 kids on those buses. So a reduction in that is not going to impact our transportation. But what we could see on the opposite end is some of those students, those higher end students who are going out to residential placement are not coming home. They're living there, they're staying there, so we're not going to incur transportations, but yet the tuition is $400,000 to $500,000 for those students.
Okay, next couple slides, we're going to run through a really just kind of level setting before we launch into the fiscal year 27 preliminary budget. What this is really just a rundown of what our actual expenditures have been, with the exception, obviously, of fiscal year 26. We're showing a budgeted number there of what we've actually spent year over year. You will see in a couple of those years, we were 7% increases for a couple of years, and then the last couple years were a little less than that. And again, some of that is attributed to the fact that we actually put some freezes on as well to cover some things. So this, again, level sets where we were for actual spend over the last several fiscal years. And then just kind of laying out where we've been for Chapter 70. So first column is our Chapter 78 and what we've received in aid. That foundation enrollment is a little different than the enrollment that you saw earlier. This is the actual number that's used in the formula for Chapter 70, which basically looks at your actual enrollment, but then it applies factors into the actual calculation, and that's the number that is derived for what they use for your foundation enrollment. We're showing you the increase over the prior year. But then lastly, the amount of the actual Chapter 70 money that the school received. So while there is Chapter 70A that comes out of the formula, you will see over the last several years, we don't take that full amount into the school. We're taking, roughly, 79% to 80% with the exception of fiscal year '22. This will hopefully help solidify what I just said about Chapter 70A. We want to just review how revenue and cost sharing with the town works. So education receipts, that's Chapter 70. General government aid is other revenue that the town receives, like Chapter 90 for highways. These are the numbers that are on our cherry sheet. And then the last one is our own local receipts, right? What we're collecting in taxes. That revenue is one big pool, right? From that revenue, what we do is we look at shared costs between the town as well as the school. So some of those things that are shared costs, like the crossing guard comes out of the town budget, but that's a shared cost between the two of us. Health insurance is shared. Transportation is considered a shared cost. We get an assessment for our regional schools, road improvements, Medicare tax, snow and ice, our general liability insurance, unemployment, and debt and retirement. Once we kind of take all of that off, then what happens is 70% goes to the school, 30% goes to the town. So that's why when you look back at that last chart, you see that we're getting less from the full Chapter 78, which is the education receipts at the top. Any questions about that? So as we move into talking about fiscal year '27, and I'll have Dr. Mackay help out with this as well, is an exposure area that we have. We've been talking about this. We really don't know the specific direction that our grant funding will take explicitly with Title I grant funding. There's a couple different options on the table. These are not things, these are things that we pay for that help support us across the district that have not been factored into the numbers you're going to see for fiscal year '27. That's kind of me setting the stage. Patty, do you want to take it from there?
So I'll say this with no certainty. And I think that's the hard part of having this conversation. We have been given heads up by the feds and by our Massachusetts grants folks. And, one of the proposals that's out there that's been talked about before is considering Title I is a 27% cut in Title I. And potential eliminations of some other things like teacher training, community schools, and English language acquisition programming. Not programming in the schools, but the grant itself. Overall, that means major program loss for us and cuts. The administration for FY26 has also proposed level funded numbers and a consolidation of the smaller grants. What that will look like, we're not sure. And cuts potentially everywhere, but preserve the core of Title I. So what you see there are the numbers of our FY26 grant, the title grants, the ESSA grants. And as you can see, there would be an impact on the budget. We'd have to really do some planning as to see if these things actually happen, how it'll play out with what is prioritized for us to maintain. How do we incorporate some of the other things that we need to do? It's not a pleasant piece of conversation, but it's also nothing is set in stone. We don't have any certainty. It's a factor, and it's things that it's on our radar, and we just have to keep planning and waiting to see what develops. I will say this: I heard on a sort of humorous tone. I was with the state Title I directors when we got the news that we were that the title grants were being reallocated into the Department of Labor, which is kind of shocking and confusing because I really don't know the relationship and why it would land there. Some of you might, but, and someone said, well, if money runs out in education, we know that we're covered in labor. So I tried to hold on to that as a little glimmer of hope.
So when we walked through this budget, we kept status quo. What we have today is what we budgeted. We didn't plan on any reductions. It would have an impact to our work should some of this be reduced because it funds things like mentoring, ILT stipends, a lot of our L work, some of our programming. So it would be a revamping, looking at everything across the board to say, how do we recoup some of that in our budget?
Through the chair,
Member Millet?
do you have creating a Plan B? Because you have staff that are paid through these grants.
There's always a Plan B. And so we have Plan B, we have Plan C, we have Plan D, and things, just not knowing what the possibilities might be because we don't know if Title I is going to be cut. Title I might be cut, not entirely, but Title I might be reduced. And we don't know if other grants are going to be eliminated, repurposed, consolidated. So there really is no way to have like a set Plan B. We have some ideas in mind that, we've, continuously have to think about this. It's not like it can be ignored. But nothing that we're ready to present because we don't actually know what it looks like.
Just to interject, I think it's always healthy to have a plan B, C, and D. I can imagine the panic that we would create if we started presenting Plan Bs, because this is significant. It has the potential to have a very significant impact, not only on Webster, but on school districts across the state and across the country. So I remain hopeful, but really guarded about where we're headed with regard to some of these grants. But good to know that those conversations are being had.
So what we did is we took, so we have a couple of budget iterations for you tonight, just to look at what they mean for us in Webster. The first one that we did was a preliminary budget. We just looked at salaries only. What does it look like? What does our budget look like to meet all of our contractual needs across the district? This budget includes the 6 new SPED positions added during this year that weren't in our FY26. We had come back because of compliance needs and having to add positions. So from when our FY26 budget was approved in May, we've added 6 new positions in there that are in this budget. And then we included all of our contractual obligations. That would be any stipend increases, any step and lane changes. All of those are brought in for everybody. And that comes to just that alone, without touching anything else in the budget, comes to a 4.64% increase for contractual obligations. That equates to a $1.289 million increase. So that's the first iteration that we did. So then from there, we took our departmental requests and added those onto this draft budget. So our draft 2 budget comes to $30,390,162. Again, we're not asking the school committee or the town for a 9.41%. This is merely what our budget looks like with our departmental requests. As I stated, we really did not talk about new programming, new positions. There are minimal changes in there. We have our compliance mandates that we had from our first draft budget. And then we made adjustments to our special education tuition and supplies. The one staffing change that we did, and this is pretty much tied right to compliance in special education. We have right now a school year secretary that leaves at the end of the school year, and with the amount of paperwork and information that we have coming in over the summer, it's becoming a compliance issue. The turnaround time to get information out to families and make sure we have things in place for the start of the school year. It just can't be done with the staff that we have. We've talked about this for years and haven't done it, but it really is becoming a problem for our schools and for the special education department. So we did add that. We have another big driver in this budget is our curriculum renewal and updates. I know Ms. Rivera has reported to you during the school year that we're looking at science curriculum update at our middle school. That is a new program for this year, so we'll get into that a little bit later. But over the years, we've been moving to HQIM. And a lot of those renewals are up this year. It's not like years ago where you just bought textbooks and that was it. It was a one-time fee. We now have reoccurring because many of these renewals come with online resources. So there's a requirement for online fees with all of these. So that's an impact to that. The next one is the school resource officer. As you know, last year we pulled that out of our budget when we were going through discussions with the town. It was double budgeted. We had it in our budget. They had it in their budget. So we had taken it out. Knowing that they were going to be short-staffed this year, they were going to have a lot of need in the town. And they figured it would help the school. Our MOA with the police department does state that we are required to pay 50% of our SRO. So we added that back in this year to be compliant with the MOA. And then just our COLA adjustments for supplies, software, and utilities, taking a look at our utilities, our copiers, and making any adjustments that we needed there.
I was just going to add from like a utility standpoint, as a good example is like for electricity, our supplier rates, we go out to bid for those, but those supplier rates are going up, right? You know, we had some really great rates for a few years, but we had to go back out to bid on that. And, you know, it goes up a few cents, but a few cents on your, we all know it on our own electricity, our electrical bills, but, you know, that's one example.
So then what we did is we took the difference between our second draft and what's the difference between our first. So that difference was 1.324 million. And what I wanted to do for you is break that down so you see what the costs were on the drivers that makes up that difference. So you can see the admin assistant impacted the budget by 13,000 to make that a full year, 13,900, almost 14,000. Adding the SRO back in impacts our budget by 40,000. Special education tuition is a big one that we're going to need to talk about. That impacted our budget by about 742,000. So we're going to have to talk about that moving forward. Also, our increases in special education contracted services. So those are services that we do above and beyond what we can do in-house that we have to go out for. And then our curriculum, which we're going to update on our next slide. So you can see if you add all of those things together, that's 1.3 million. So the remaining of that was just miscellaneous. That's what the increase in our budget. Yes?
Member Adamopoulos?
In the draft one, would that eliminate the school resource officer?
Oh,
It was not in there. It was not in the draft one. So it was just salary updates. So we kept exactly what we had this year and added the 6 positions and did that. So it would remain in the town and it may eliminate the school resource officer.
It's through the chair,
Member Scariglia?
because the police department paid for it last year, and they're
This
not-
year. They're
Sorry,
paying for-
this
yeah.
this FY '26.
Yeah.
But they're relooking and maybe readjusting that for FY '27.
Well, we have it back in our, right now, it belongs in our budget because we have an MOA that states we're going to fund 50% of it. That's our agreement with them. And if we're going to pull an officer, an SRO, which, you know, I believe is important, the police chief believes it's important to be in our schools, then we're responsible for half of it. The town may fund it, but if we do, we can't. What do we have to say that we can pull him into our schools? If he's needed out on the street and he's needed to cover patrols, then that's where he goes.
Right, through the chair. I know they had a lot of medical leaves.
They
the police
did.
Department this year. And I know our resource officer was utilized wherever he was needed, you know, for safety. But if we were to pay our 50 like we should, would that keep him on campus? Or would Officer or Chief Shaw still take him?
No, and he would keep him on campus. So I spoke with him yesterday about the SRO position, and he feels that it's, you know, that a lot of the people who are out on leaves, maternity leaves, are back in. Injuries are, you know, people are healed and back to work. So he's hopeful that his staffing level is a little more consistent where he could, you know, relieve the SRO from duties on the patrol and have him back in the school. Again, when they are short-staffed, it has always been his past practice that he pulls. He tries not to do that, but, you know, again, we look at the overall town safety.
So just as a point of clarification, Officer Malhouse is the school resource officer. He's
Correct.
also a police officer. And with the number of people who are out on leave and the staffing situation, that's why he was at times
Correct.
redeployed, not because the police department absorbed the
Correct.
cost of the salary. Those happened in the same year, but were independent of
Yes,
each other.
absolutely, yes. So we'll talk a little bit about our curriculum renewals and update. Ms. Rivera, you want to talk about that, our curriculum director?
Thank you. So as you can see, we are basically up for renewal for a lot of the different curriculum that we are currently using at each one of the schools, which is bringing us to, and this is well, almost $400,000, and this is not even considering other instructional resources that we also are currently using and we have in place. So this is the minimum. And again, with the 175,000 for the science curriculum review for the middle school. And again, we're also up for the elementary, even though we're not adding it in this budget. That would be something to consider for the future as well. We also have the renewal for most of the social studies curriculum for both the middle school and also the high school as well. And considering all the different content areas that we have to renew, the $30,000 is actually pretty a good conservative number right here, our cost. And a lot of it has to do because it's older curriculum that does not necessarily may have all the resources available, and that would be one of the content areas that in the future we would have to go through the review process in order to ensure that we upgrade them to high quality instructional material. Not that necessarily they're not, but we would have to go through that review as well by the recommendation of the Department of Education as well. And then we also have our Wonders and Study Sync renewal, which again, you can see the difference in the cost. That includes not only the hard copies, books, it includes the online platforms. It also includes student online access as well, and also technology and PLTW renewals as well. Any questions about the curriculum?
The science curriculum, the Open SciEd for the middle school, Ms. Rivera, that, it says new here.
Yes.
Is that's something that we would be adding to the middle school science curriculum?
Yes. And right now, we are still going through the pilot process. Currently, the middle school is piloting Open SciEd and also piloting Amplify Science. And that is ongoing for the next couple of months. And then at the end of that review process, they'll make a decision. We're going to be making a decision depending on how the budget looks. So the $175,000 would be the minimum amount that we would need in order to purchase a new curriculum. That is based on a quote that we got from Open SciEd. Amplify Science also is right around the same cost, probably a little bit higher, to be honest with you. So we're trying to budget for the minimum possible, and we're also, I'm also working with a lot of the vendors to see if we can commit to more than 1 year purchase and then break down the cost so that we can pay 1 year at a time, even though we are making a commitment of 3 years versus buying 1 year at a time, because that is actually, it brings up the cost if we do 1 year renewal. But typically, when we're buying a new curriculum, it's at the beginning, we're buying all the resources and hard copies, digital content, and student access, teacher access. So it is a big cost.
Thank you. And what,
Yeah.
we're using Open SciEd at the high school also, or no?
We are using Open SciEd for biology at the high school. Yes.
What are we using now at the middle school?
For the middle school, STEM scopes, which
that's
is, yeah, it is not considered by the Department of Education to be a high-quality instructional material. So that's one of the areas that we are required to go through the process of review and updating with high-quality instructional material. And currently, we only have 2 science curriculum that are
Considered high.
rated as high-quality instructional material, which is Open SciEd and Amplify Science.
Thanks. I'm sorry for all the questions.
That's okay.
I do have one more.
Yeah.
That $175,000, you indicated that's the low end
Yes.
of the estimate. Is that for
Mhm.
4 grades? For
That would be for
1 year?
grades 5 through 8th.
Right, just for year 1?
And that would be for year 1.
And all the
the
startup
beginning.
materials and things that
Yes.
are associated with?
Absolutely, because it is, whenever you start the new process of, introducing a new curriculum, we are starting basically from zero. So we have to get all the books, the digital platforms for teachers and students, and student notebooks. And also, we have to buy the kits for every single unit, for every single grade. So it is a big cost. We actually updated last year, Eureka, and it was double that price. So we're trying to stay on the lower end considering the budget.
Through the chair.
Thank you for that.
You're very
Member Scriglia?
Amplify, they have a lot of different avenues of their curriculum. Do we use them for anything else? We don't use them for ELA or anything else.
No.
It's
no.
so,
Yeah.
I just wonder in the future if there's like, I don't know, buy
Mhm.
3, get 1 free. Like if, I don't know if we can like streamline the programs that we use. I know we're on different review, like years.
Yeah, cycles.
But like HMH or,
Yeah.
Amplify, if like
Mhm.
we can use them for multiple subjects, I don't know if that would decrease some overall costs. And just, I'm interested to see how the pilot goes.
Yes.
I'm hopefully optimistic about Open SciEd, but I have colleagues and friends who have used it, and they do not like it, like at all. So it's interesting. It will be interesting to see how our district pilots it and our teachers. But I have not heard the best of things. And I think I remember last year going over the MCAS data. Our MCAS data for science wasn't bad compared to our other areas with the curriculum that we didn't have. So I think I made a note to say it'll be interesting to see, because our teachers piecemealed a lot together for science at the level that it was. So it'll be interesting to see the comparison with the curriculum, but yeah, I don't know. It stinks.
It's tough, and it hits, when we purchased a lot of this, we purchased with ESSER, you purchased 3 years, we were doing 3-year renewals, and so now they're coming up all at once, some of our big ticket items, and then when you look at purchasing a year, you don't have any cost savings for a year. That's how they get you. They want you to purchase the
Right.
3. So when you look at that, 1 year of Wonders could be $90,000, but if you purchase 3 years, it's probably $150. So you're almost getting a free year by doing that. And most programs do that. So how do you make it sustainable and consistent for budgeting purposes so you're not seeing spikes throughout your budget?
Right, and I mean, certainly, these are one of the things that are costs that seem to be within our control in many ways because they're not salary, they're not contractual obligations, but at the end of the day, these are the things that are augmenting the folks that are standing in the classroom, providing the lessons, and they're critically important to, to teaching our students what they need to know to be prepared for the next grade or for what's coming after high school for sure. And on the one hand, it would be an attractive idea to say, can we have a multi-year subscription and delay payment, but our budget outlook isn't any better for the next year and the year after that. So we'll be having this reckoning, whether it's now or down the line.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, please.
I think that it is it's more within our control than some contractual obligations or other things, but there's also a push and like a mandate really to have high quality instructional materials across the subjects. And so if we were in a different budget situation, we may have been able to entertain additional or other ideas, but our ELA curriculum is already high quality instructional material. And so we have had to take a look at like which areas are not yet. And so when we have this much and this much work to do, that's where the focus needs to be.
And through the chair.
Members curricula?
And I just, like a soapbox, moment, but for something that's mandated by the state, for something that we need to do, unless don't know, but there's no, like, grants or anything to support the districts, like, in purchasing. I know there's the funding, but it's not, like, our funding goes to the things that we need, like, I don't know. It's just weird. Like, you need this, but we're not going to help you get it, Well,
it's the ESSER money, it was given to you for a benefit to help you purchase these things, but it didn't help the sustainability of the product.
Right.
So yes, it gets it in the district, but now we have to maintain it for years to come. And so that's where it falls short. We're here to help you, but then the money goes away, and what do we do now? How do we get rid of a program? What does that mean if we get rid of, Wonders? What do we use? What do we have that we can use? We don't.
Right. But we simply can't.
And the ESSER money, it's not like something that we had that we could save. Like, we needed to spend it.
Yes, we had to.
We had to, So it's not like, oh, let's put it in our piggy bank and save it for when this all goes back to how it was. But, we were obligated and mandated to spend it.
Otherwise, it wouldn't be COVID relief money.
Right.
So it had to be spent. We had to make a direct connection to why we needed it based on what happened with COVID and how we needed to support learning loss and all of those words that came up that we learned a new lexicon through COVID. But yeah, that came and had a deadline. And,
Right.
and we had a generous amount of time and a generous amount of money. And we did purchase a lot of things that we needed. But then when that goes away, how do we sustain it all? We talked at length about the cliff, the ESSER cliff. And so, but here we are. But I'm not sure that this is about the ESSER cliff, because we could have purchased all of these things with ESSER, but we would be here renewing 10 programs, which no budget can fiscally do. And so I think it is like in the ideal world, you have to do this, and here's the resource to do it. And we are given grants every once in a while, and we'll keep an eye out for anything that helps us support curriculum. But it is the state of affairs.
I just have one more thing to add regarding ESSER, and hopefully this will be the last time I use that word tonight, at least. We, as a district, I think, did better than many districts across the state at planning very thoughtfully around that ESSER cliff that we all saw on the horizon, and really skillfully moved a lot of our must-haves, things that had been nice to haves, and once we were able to incorporate them into our day-to-day lives, became really essential to our core programming. I think that this leadership team really was very skillful at moving some of those things into our LEA budget over the last several years. So while we are not in the best position out there, we're positioned much better than many districts when it comes to the planning that's gone into our financial situation. So compliments to all of you for taking something that's feeling largely impossible and making things happen. I do wonder if there's a way for us to work these subscriptions so that we are chopping them up.
We're trying.
Okay.
We're trying.
Right. I think of it as a two-pronged approach of having the renewal years staggered and also paying, call it an installment plan, where we're paying these subscription costs over the course of the life of the subscription or the term of the subscription. So that would certainly alleviate some of the crunch this year and would eliminate some of those peaks that we're experiencing too.
Yep, that's what we're working on.
Okay, using the second draft, kind of giving you an overview of the budget composition. Most notably, our most valuable resources, which are our people, make up the lion's share of our budget. It's a little over 80% of our budget. So when we look at some of the other notable areas, we did see that 742 increase for us out-of-district tuition. So we're seeing that out-of-district tuition going up a little bit from what we had it at last year. It's up to 10% of the overall budget. Maintenance is just slightly down, but that's because other things around it are increasing. But special education coming into draft 2 is a little over 35%, and I think last year we were around 32, 33%. So that gives you an overview of some of the notable items, and then the pie chart on the right kind of gives you all of our resources. Not everything is labeled, but it is color-coded, but kind of pointing out where those salaries, that 80% is distributed across the entire district.
This slide explains our circuit breaker, and this is an area that I'm going to be looking for some feedback from the school committee. We are breaking from our past practice this year. So as you know, we've always tried to carry over 1 year of circuit breaker. That has been the past practice for many years to help us, and if anything comes up during that year, and to have some stability in the years to come. If you look at the first column, this is what we budgeted for FY26. So this is what we did when town meeting was approved last year. This is what we had budgeted. We, at that point in time, our tuitions were at 4.4. We had 2.3 million in LEA, so that was budgeted for tuitions in the LEA. We were planning on using carryover from circuit breaker. We were planning on, we had budgeted circuit breaker for FY26. This was our anticipated receipts coming in that we were hoping to get, which adds up these these three items right here to get our revenue of 5.2. We were anticipating carrying over $795,000 into FY27. So last year, we started dipping into our circuit breaker, breaking from what we've been doing in the past because of our tuition costs going up. So if we look at where we were, I'm going to say last week, because things might be changing as of today. But this is as of, we'll say, last week. We were at an actual 5.1 million in tuition, up from 4.4 at town meeting. Our LEA budget hasn't changed. We were able to carry over at the end of the year our full circuit breaker allotment. So we did not touch FY25s. We put our spending freeze on last year. We had a lot of salary contingency that was saved last year because of, unfortunately, positions not filled. We had many positions that were not filled. So we were able to hold on to our circuit breaker funds for this year. And as you can see, I'm really glad we did because our tuition went up about $700,000. And then we're anticipating our FY26 circuit breaker at 1.8 million, which gets our revenue to 6 million. So we're hoping to carry over 953,000 in revenue to next year. So that's less than half of our circuit breaker, which we'll be carrying over. If we look at next year's tuition, we are up to 5.1. For now, we increased our tuition by 700,000. I think it was 742 I showed you on the previous line. So our LEA went up. We have the 953,000. We estimated our circuit breaker based off of our 5.1 million, looking at any tuitions that are over the base. The base for circuit breaker is 54,000, just under 54,000. So the school district is required to pay the first 54,000. Anything over that 54,000, the state reimburses at a 75-25 percentage. So our reimbursement from circuit breaker is the 75% over the base fee. Does that make sense? So if we have $100,000 tuition and we have 54,000, the school district needs to cover the 54,000. That leaves 46,000. Then you take 75% of that, and that is the school's reimbursement. Okay. So looking at next year's numbers, if we were carrying over the 953 like we're hoping to, and then we calculate our reimbursements at using the circuit breaker formula, that brings our revenue to 6.2. That means we would be carrying over 1.1 million, which is, again, 50% of our circuit breaker. So there's no way we can carry over a full year. If I were to put that in and carry over a full year, we'd be increasing this LEA by a huge increase, which we already can't. So one of the things that we're going to be looking for recommendations is, do we put more circuit breaker funds? Do we take another 600,000, reduce this LEA, which is going to help our overall budget? We have determined that a percentage in our budget is about 277,000, 278,000. So for every percentage in our budget, that equals about 278. So if we were to move 600,000, that's going to decrease our budget by about 2 percentage points. But then that's going to leave us with not a lot of wiggle room for next year. So by reducing that, we have to be mindful that if we should have any other big tuitions that come in, we might not be able to have that. You know, as you can see from this year, we've needed to go back, and we're going to have to use more circuit breaker. Otherwise, we'd be going back to the town. Questions? Thoughts?
Member Adamopoulos?
So it's a Band-Aid.
Yeah, basically.
We fix it this year. We have to figure it out again next year by taking out $600,000 we don't have available to us at that time.
Right. I mean, it's funds that we can have, we can apply as much as we can, but then we're at risk. We have been very fortunate that any situations that come up, any special education staffing that may need to happen, any of those big tuitions come in, we've always had that circuit breaker to fall on where we're not having to go back to town and asking for money. And what does that look like? If we're getting a 300,000, then, you know, we're going into a deficit in our budget. So this is an area that, you know, I will be looking for some guidance.
Through the chair.
Member Scariglia?
So going to town, so that's like we're asking the town people to vote to give us an allotted amount to support the special ed at some point next year, potentially, if we take from circuit breaker.
Right, so we would have to ask at a town meeting. So like we've done for transportation, in the past, we've had to wait till May, and then we go back in May, we explain that we're anticipating a deficit, and they have to approve for us to use funds from any available source that they may have, whether it's free cash, whether it's, yeah.
For this school year, we had a reduction of special ed students that transferred to the 504. It was like, was it 10 students? How many? 40? What was it? 24.
Are no longer going out of district, but their tuition doesn't offset the cost of some of the other higher cost tuitions.
So those 24 students, have we fiscally responsible for them anymore? No.
No.
Did that impact the budget at all?
Those numbers weren't closely related to the students that are sent out of district. We had 14 students leave that are anticipated to graduate, move, drop out of school. So that's going to have an impact, but it didn't offset it enough because those tuitions were substantially lower than some of the students that were placed out of district.
Out of state, right, or out of district, right.
And what you're thinking of is the in-district. So we have in-district, we might have students who have went over to a 504, but really, what's the cost savings of that? There really isn't any cost savings for that.
Right.
Unless they had a one-on-one, and then it's highly unlikely that somebody's on a,
Right, and goes just to a
Right.
504 from that.
right.
Are we going to have to go to the town, like as a unit for any type of vote leading up to the budget? Do we know yet? Like for like an increase of anything, like taxes
this
or
year?
anything? Yeah, for FY27? Because I'm wondering, like, I'm just wondering, would it, as a townsperson or as a voter, right, say we dip into our circuit breaker for whatever reason, what would be the bigger ask? You know what I mean? A tax increase to sustain a budget, or like a vote on additional costs for transportation or additional costs for tuition? I'm just speaking out loud. Do you know what I mean?
I think you're asking if we need to go for an override. Is that what you're asking? Are you asking that if we need to go back to the town?
Like,
to look
right,
for-
of the two things, you know, for the town, like, it's like for our budget and the town's, like, because I know we had the workshop and it, it wasn't too optimistic.
Yeah,
If I may.
yes.
Member Millet, if you're going to speak, would you mind to put on your microphone and so that everyone can hear you?
I will record my opinion that a 2.5 override would devastate the town, and it's a Band-Aid. Because it's only going to fix something for a very short period of time, but it's going to devastate a lot of people.
And we may not have to go back to the town during the school year to ask for money. I mean, we've seen some pretty extreme cases this past year. And not just one, not just two. We've had a few that have been major impacts to our budget. You can see the numbers there. Just by the share of students leaving and, losing 12 students, but our tuition going up. You can tell, and how long is the town? We don't even know where our revenue is at this point at the town. Do I anticipate that we're going to get enough Chapter 70 and we're going to get enough Chapter 90 and we're going to have enough town receipts to accommodate all of our requests? No, I don't think that's going to happen. Realistically, and we have other slides that speak to, and maybe we should continue on that. Yeah, we're getting close.
If I may?
Yeah.
Just a couple of things I want to address with regard to bridging the gap between the school budget and the school expenses. In the time that I've been part of the school committee, I think that this was the first time I can recall going back to the town and asking for additional funding.
Yeah.
I do recall having funding available and giving it back.
Yes.
At times when we were operating in a different financial landscape and were able to spend well under the school budget that was allocated to us. And, in addition to that, what I would add is a 2.5% tax increase for taxpayers does not cover contractually required salary increases for our employees. So if you were to look at it from the way of, you can't increase the tax base by more than 2.5%, and I'm not pro or against any of this, but just to break it down, our percent increase for salaries for even just our Unit A staff far exceeds 2.5% on an annual basis. So just with that, and then the knowledge of the utilities, the costs for that, the cost of supplies, materials, labor in general, everything is more expensive, and the rate that everyone's being squeezed because the cost of everything has gone up. And, we're contractually required to provide these salary increases, and, it's 80% of our budget. And there's certainly curriculum and all these other things that also are very costly, but the system is not made to adequately fund public education.
I think that's well said, and if you take a look at the two pieces of information I gave you about Chapter 70, I think it highlights that, right? So that Proposition 2.5 really does not even align with the minimum contribution that's required. So that is in direct conflict with what we're required to do for spending on education. So I think some of that feedback on the Chapter 70, I think will be enlightening if you get a chance to take a look at that.
And through the chair, I guess for your, looking for us for feedback on the circuit breaker, as Nico said, it's like a Band-Aid, right? But do we want to provide the first aid? I mean, or do we want to get to the point where we're asking, someone else or the town or whatever? Like, I think we just need to find a healthy balance of us taking care of it versus asking, but also finding that middle, I'd want to take care of it almost now, but still have a little bit of something just in case something were to happen. It's weird. It's a lot to think about, but I mean, if we have the money, but if you ask my husband, I'm not allowed to touch the money because I just spend it, So it's just, I want to provide, what we have to what we need, if we have it.
Through the chair, just to kind of touch on that, I want to jump a few slides ahead, but the Band-Aid is a good idea, it's great, but even with the Band-Aid, with the projected deficit the town's looking at, it's not going to really take care of much. The town's still going to potentially be at a $2 million deficit, even if we do that. So you know, it's a Band-Aid, it's not really even covering up the wound at this point. Without us getting that further information, it's probably gonna come in the next couple of weeks, where we can actually be working with some maybe more.
Some
real
actual numbers. Yep, not just guesswork.
Because even with that, and like I said, I'm jumping ahead, but I think the number the town's using is a whole point lower than what draft one is in our presentation today. So that number is not even accurate from this
Correct.
information.
Correct. And I don't need an answer today, but it's something that needs to stay on our radar, and it's information that you need to have. This slide was just a quick look at our school choice in sending and receiving through FY25. As you can see in FY25, our receiving students went up and our sending numbers had gone down a bit. So that's good news. And then Lisa?
Yeah, so as we kind of wrap this up, and what are the key takeaways? January 21, I think, is a key date for us. That's when the governor releases the state budget. That gives us some insight into what we're seeing for funding overall. On a bright side, at least our enrollment is up. You know, it's up 28 students from last year, so that helps out a bit. The inflation factor that I just reported on, that is a little bit of help as well when it comes to revenue. And then the other point around Chapter 70 is we are in year 6 of 6. So going into fiscal year 27, we're going in with the formula the way it is. We need to remain hopeful that going into fiscal year 28, they make some major overhauls to that, so that maybe in fiscal year 28, maybe not, no one has a crystal ball, could we be in a better situation where that formula works out, that it takes into consideration some of those points that we already made about Proposition 2.5. Even the rate that the inflation factor goes up doesn't even keep up with real inflation, right? So there's all of those things that are at play. So we got to keep an eye on that, but I think we also have to stay grounded in the earlier conversation we had this year with the tri-boards, right? We looked at revenue projections. We know last year we used free cash to offset our deficit for this year. It was a very generous Band-Aid that the town offered up, but we are projecting right now a little over 2 million deficit from a revenue standpoint, and that was using a factor for school expenditures at 3.75%, right? So it's still early, right? We need to let some things become more clear to us. And then I think, as the superintendent said, we've been having lots of conversations. We talk about Plan Bs. This is going to be a continuous iteration in terms of how we look at this, right? What, you know, how do we stop the bleeding? Is there something we do in the interim? What does that mean for the long term? I think as a collective team, we're trying to keep all of these factors, as well as the grant funding and the exposure we have there, right? So there's so many moving pieces that we need to continue looking at what are our options and how can we present the best budget for the town and for our students and our staff.
Agreed.
So.
Agreed. And that concludes our presentation. I hope you can see that although the percentage is scary, we didn't ask for a lot in this budget. We are looking at basic resources. We're looking at curriculum. We're looking at compliance, which is a huge part of the increase, which is our tuitions that we didn't have a lot of control over some of those, which is a huge impact to our budget this year. We're meeting all contractual obligations, which we are required to do. There are not a lot of big asks in this budget at all.
Oh, and the other thing I think to keep in mind too is when we look at circuit breaker, while the reimbursement program is fantastic, that threshold or that base that the superintendent was talking about, that increases a little bit every year, right? So goes up maybe 2,000, so that means that your base tuition, you're covering the full amount of that. So that even that little incremental increase on that threshold is more that we're absorbing into our budget, right? And that's a slow sort of increase in the budget itself.
And what do we get our tuitions going up this year? 3%, is it? Did we get that number?
Yeah, it was 2.76, I think. I have to go back and double check it, but I think it was 2.76 was the increase.
For our tuitions.
Everything is increasing more than 2.5% around us,
Yes.
for us as individuals and families and educators.
Thoughts?
Well, I think that the committee certainly had a lot of questions and feedback throughout the presentation. And it looks like, I don't want to speak for anybody, it looks like many of us are satisfied with the thoughts and feedback that we shared throughout this presentation. Is there any other lingering questions or comments with regard to this budget?
Through the chair.
Member Scariglia?
I think, what was our increase last year? Was like 3%? What was it? I mean, at what point do we start preparing that? Because I think we're at like that 4 and some change. So what, like, at what point do we start preparing like only like a 3% increase or 3 point, wherever we were last year? It's gonna be reductions, but,
That work's happening, right?
Yep. Yep.
okay.
So we work forward into bringing you this, and then we go back and say, what does a 7% look like? What does a 5% look like? What does a 3% look like? What does a 2% look like? We have, if you look in your budgets, that in your packet, you have 2 budgets. So if you were to look at the departmental,
Yep.
and then the back page on that budget, so it'll tell you if we are looking at 3.75, which the town had, we would have to cut $1.5 million from our budget.
Right.
So what is a 1.5? To get down to 3%, we are cutting 1.79, almost 1.8 million out of this budget. So you have the gist. It's our work to meet as a team and to talk about what that looks like for our district. As you can see, there is not a lot of fluff built into this budget. So there's not a lot to cut.
I would argue no fluff.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would agree with that.
Through the chair.
Member Millet?
And I will say what I did at that tri-board meeting. And I think we're doing it. And that is every department in this town has to look at needs and not wants. There's no room for wants right now in this economy. It has to be what is absolutely needed and not what is wanted to benefit everybody.
Yep.
And I can share with you that the town accountant and the town administrator, through the town departments, asked for them to submit 2 versions of a budget, the first one, and then a 5% reduction in every one of the departments. So that's what they're working on right now.
One thing that I would like to see, if possible, for the next time we get together would be, excuse me, some movement with regard to negotiating the renewals on those subscriptions, and even negotiating that rate down with whoever the front runner is after those pilots are finished with Open Syed, and the name of the other one escapes me. And thank you, Amplify. And looking at some creative payment structures for not only the science curriculum, but any of the subscriptions that need to be renewed, if we can chunk those up over the course of, a 3-year agreement or something like that. I think that would be helpful. I know it's a drop in the bucket, but every little bit helps.
Yep. We've already done that, and we've started looking at, through the curriculum, what do we have for supplemental? What do we not need for supplemental? We have HQIM. No one curriculum is perfect, right? They all have some weak spots in them, some lapses that you use to supplement, but we've taken a look at programs. What are we using? What are we not using? Do we need to have that? Is that a necessity for us? So we have gone through those, looking at usages, looking at everything to see what do we not need, what can we get rid of. We have the HQIM, so we're taking a deep dive into that.
Thank you. I'm confident you all are. One other thought would be around technology. I don't know if we have any scheduled equipment purchases that would be hitting next year, if we can delay those or something like that. I'm not sure what our cycle is and where we're at with that with regard to Chromebooks and that
Yeah,
kind of
we've
thing.
already been talking about whether or not we're going to need to reduce for staff. Maybe we elongate the
Yep.
lifespan of those devices. Because we also have on the heels, which is not in this budget, and not that I want to be a Debbie Downer, but one of the major players in the memory market are dropping out. So there is suspicion that cost of these devices is going to increase substantially. So that's a concern that's running rampant across the state with all of the IT directors and managers, because that will drive up device costs as well. So we will have to look at, the lifespan of those devices and making them last longer.
And typically, we've been on a cycle with our Chromebooks, grades 5 and 9, actually, replacing those. You don't get much more than 4 years out of a Chromebook, unfortunately. So stretching that might not be beneficial. But we are looking at everything with a fine-tooth comb. We are truly looking at everything with a fine-tooth comb.
All right, anything else from the committee with regard to the budget update? Okay, well, thank you all for your hard work and presentation. The next several items on our
So
agenda.
if you don't mind, I'll excuse.
Oh, yes.
It's
Thank
a long
you all.
day. It's a long day.
You don't want to stay?
You're welcome to stay if you'd like, but I know tomorrow morning comes really quick, so.
Thank you. Thanks for giving us your time this evening. All right, so with that being said, the next several items on our agenda are policy reviews or updates. The first one is related to fiscal management goals. It's the first reading. It's policy DA. Mrs.
And if-
Brand, oh, sorry.
Actually, I'm
go
going to
ahead.
make a few comments. So the majority of them, with the exception of JFA, we're doing a review of all of the fiscal policies. So there are a total of 22 that are currently, that have been evaluated or in the process of being evaluated, 11 in front of you today. There are 6 that we're looking to adopt the updated language from the Mass Association of School Committees based on their recommendations. Of those 6, 5 we actually had previous policies for, so it's really an update of all of the language. One of them is a brand-new policy for us, but it's a practice that we already do with authorizing a signature or a designee to sign. So it's consistent with our practice. And then there's 5 that we're recommending to be removed that have also been removed by the association as no longer, as basically being obsolete or providing no value anymore moving forward. So that's kind of a high-level summary of those policies. If you want me to go deeper in each one, we can definitely do that.
Great, thank you for that. So, Ms. Contos, did you want to walk us through anything related to any of these first one, two?
I will tell you that most of the language in these were either references to updated language and how we're talking about education in general and managing our financials. But in addition to that, it also incorporated some additional legal references as well that are pertinent, as well as tying into our own town charter as well as it relates to budget deadlines and things of that nature. So these are more clear, crisp, and updated. Doesn't change the overall purpose of them. I think it just cleans up the language.
Mm-hmm. And that's it for the first, I think it's 6 that are related to finance?
That's correct.
Okay, great, thank you. So I'll go through each of these first 6 by title, and these will be the first reading of these following policies. Policy DA, fiscal management goals. Policy DB, annual budget. Policy DBC, budget deadlines and schedules. Policy DGA, authorized signatures. Policy DJ, purchasing. and policy DK, payment procedures. So that will be the first reading on all of those. The next policy is policy JFA, and that's related to CTE school admissions.
Correct.
Mrs. Perangeli, would you like to talk to us about this one?
Yep, this is brand new to us. It is a new requirement by the state. Recently, I brought you the middle school pathway exploration policy. This follows along with that. Being a new updated, this is just how we're admitting our CTEs into school. The process is that we come, we're given some guidelines, we draft the policy that gets uploaded to the state. They then review it and give you feedback on it and make any recommendations or changes to that. So Ms. Nieves and Ms. Bigelow have worked on this. They've looked at it. I've reviewed it. It's our policy. As far as CTE, once this is approved, I will upload it to the state. But it is brand new to us.
Thank you for that. Any questions or comments from the committee with regard to policy CTE, school admissions?
And just so you know, right now, our CTE policy is that any of our students can apply as long as there's space in our programs. They can apply and will be taken in. If for some reason they are capped, then it goes to a lottery. We do have school choice here in Webster, so any school choice students coming in have the same access to programming as any of our other students in Webster. What we did take out of that is, out of this policy, I took out non-resident tuition because we are not taking in other kids from other districts that paying tuition to come to our CTE programs at this point. So I did take that out of the policy. If we are going to allow that down the road, then we can come back to the committee and add that. But as you know, we're in the process of building our programs, and we want our students to be able to access those programs. So that's why we did that at this point.
Great. Thank you for walking us through that. Any questions or comments from the committee about this? Oh, no? This will be our first reading of policy JFA, CTE school admissions. And we have several policies that Ms. Contos referenced that will be removed. They are policy DBH, statement assurances, policy DBI, budget operations and control, policy DID, annual inventory, policy DJG, vendor relations, and policy DKB, payroll deductions. Is there any discussion around the first reading of the removal of those policies? Okay. The next item is policy IHBH, middle school pathway exploration policy.
Yep. This is, I did put on the agenda update and approval. You have already seen this one twice. I submitted it into the state and received feedback on it. They wanted more specific. The highlight, okay, you have the second copy. In those areas that I highlighted, they wanted the language to be more specific. They asked me to add, I put the district will collaborate with CTE programs to inform students about opportunities admission. They wanted me to be very specific to the middle school and put in the grades 7 and 8. And then they also wanted me to add in that admissions should be limited for lottery, and that I'll send them information. Only attendance and discipline and student interest. So basically, they wanted me to state the law. They wanted to be very specific in there. So they sent back those recommendations, so I'm asking for your approval on that so I can submit it back in.
Thank you, Mrs. Perangeli. Any questions or comments from the committee? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve this policy IHBH as presented.
So moved. Second?
There's a motion and a second. Desiree, would you please poll the committee?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes, motion passes, and thank you for the work on all of these policies and the revision of this one.
Thank you, and I appreciate that, and hopefully they will be happy with that. I asked them to review it before I came here to see if they had any other thoughts, and they sent me the manual, so
Oh, great.
hopefully I
That's
won't be
helpful.
back.
Excellent. The next item on the agenda is the acceptance of donations, and that's various school supplies that were donated from the Rosario family to Webster Middle School.
Yes. I am asking the committee to accept the donations and would like to thank the Rosario family for their contributions to the Webster Public Schools.
Great. That's nice of them to make a
Yes,
donation.
absolutely.
Any questions or comments from the committee? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to accept the donation of school supplies.
Second?
There's a motion and a second. Desiree, would you please poll the committee?
Yes.
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 Yes, motion passes. And once again, thank you to the Rosario family. The next item on the agenda is review transfer signing of warrants, bills, payroll, and vouchers. And there is a transfer request. That's in the amount of $6,221.71 from the Webster Middle School Activity Savings Account to the checking account. I'll entertain a motion to approve that.
Second?
There's a motion and a second. Desiree, would you please poll the committee?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, motion passes.
You have what?
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
There's a motion and a second. Desiree, would you please poll the committee?
Yes.
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 Yes, meeting adjourned. Good night, everyone.